So now let's move into some DC news. So James Gunn on the last day of January announced the official slates for Chapter 1 Gods and Monsters, and this is only part, he said, of um the DC Chapter 1. I want to go to you first, and we won't discuss all the projects, but we'll discuss some ones that stood out. What stood out to you?
Uh, Booster Gold. I did not expect Booster Gold in a Phase One type of situation. I'm very excited for Booster Gold. I love Booster Gold. I thought that was like really surprising for me. The most exciting and most anticipated one is Batman Brave and the Bold.
Hmm.
I'm a really big Batman person more than Superman. Like I like Batman more than Superman, and I think it's kind of exciting that we're getting two Batman movies in the span of like a year because we get Batman 2 first, and then we get Brave and the Bold right after.
Yeah, I 100% agree. My favorite announcement was obviously we got an official date on the Batman 2. I believe October of 2025.
October
And,
3rd, yeah.
yeah, and then the new Batman, the new DCU Batman. And to have the Bat family, I think James Gunn talking about the importance of the Bat family, um, and Damian Wayne, his own biological son, his favorite Robin, him being the center vocal point of the story. Um, I think that's going to be really cool to see. And we haven't really gotten a good or really any like live action Robin. So
Yeah.
like I'm really excited to see that. I don't know where they're going to go with it. You would think that they would want to introduce a younger Batman, but it feels like we're going to have already established Batman. And I'm fine with that, especially if we're going to do the Elseworld story with Robert Pattinson's Batman, where it's a younger Batman. So, like, it would be nice to see an older, established Batman. Maybe we can get other, of the Robins, Nightwing, that sort of thing.
Oh, just
Um,
so bad.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That would be really cool. Superman New Legacy, I'm really excited for. I am worried. Gun writing Superman movie, it's got me a little worried. Um,
I think it depends. I hope he just doesn't go too goofy with the tone. Other than that, I think Gunn has it if he doesn't go too goofy. Because I know he knows how to write like good, deep emotional scenes. Because Peacemaker, tackled that really well. It balanced comedy and drama really well. So I know he knows how to handle drama decently and pretty well. So I have hope that he'll do good, just not to go too much on the comedy.
yeah, yeah, I agree with that. Honestly, I mean, I really do agree with that. Um, yeah, I do agree with that. And then, I do worry about with the Superman Legacy. Also, is also if he directed it. I don't think he'll direct it though. But
Yeah.
like, another project I am excited for. I'm looking at him again. I gotta make sure the Lanterns, obviously. Um, we're gonna have Hal Jordan and Stewart. That's really exciting, like a buddy cop type of deal. Um, exploring the universe, and Gunn emphasized the importance of the show, and how it's going to tie into the whole overarching narrative. And it's really interesting that Gunn emphasized the importance of a television show because it's something that I think you would agree even that Marvel struggled with. Like the Disney Plus shows don't feel as significant to the overarching narrative. So having the lanterns be emphasized as being important for this chapter one, I think is really, really important. I want to kind of get your thoughts on that. And, because we discussed a little bit before that we thought there was going to be a lantern centric project. So, what do you think about the lanterns playing such a big importance in this first chapter of the DCU?
I think it's really exciting. I think because too, they're also introducing the Authority, which is kind of going to be like a threat on Earth. I feel like too, if they're going to do like more cosmic threats, that the Lanterns are going to be perfect for that. So like I hope in the show it'll be like not just Hal and John, but a bunch of other Lanterns, kind of like an anthology series where each episode deals with a different Lantern in a different part of the universe fighting a different threat. And they could set up, these that's another DC projects. They could be just for the Lantern show, doesn't matter. I feel like that would be really cool anthology with different lanterns in different sectors. I feel like it would be like you get to see explore the wider DC universe because you're not just with one person seeing it through the perspectives of multiple people. I feel like that'd be really fun to do.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Just seeing all the different, aspects and, that sort of thing, and then it tying into the larger narrative. And then, so I think my big three are, the new Batman, the Superman Legacy, the Lanterns, but also an underrated one. And it's one kind of, I've never heard of these characters. I don't read comics much, so I don't know a lot of these characters. The Authority, they've been described. You could correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know a lot, but they've been described as almost sort of, they're characters that have they're not morally, they will do the right thing even if it's morally corrupt. Is that a good way to put it?
Yeah, think of them kind of like the Seven and the Boys, but like a little less corrupt. They're just
Okay.
the Seven.
Okay. So do you think this could be like a boys centric or boys styled movie or type of deal, or what would you like to see from it?
Well, the Authority is a hard character. I read their comics years ago because I thought it was an Invincible comic because they all wore like all white, and I thought it was Invincible. Get into that years ago. But yeah, no, so there's like only like two really interesting characters. One of them's I think his name's like Apollo something. I forgot what the other one's name was. Those are like the two only interesting ones.
Okay.
Other than that, I feel like they're kind of just like C-list characters. But then again, Gunn is really good with C-list characters. Like
Yeah,
you
I was just gonna. Yeah, I was just gonna say Guardians, Suicide Squad, like Peacemaker, like those type of characters. Yeah, I think this could be, because Gun, does good with these type of characters. Um, some projects. I mean, we could kind of touch on that. I mean, Waller, cool.
Viola Davis is back. I'm so happy about that they kept her.
Yes, she's fantastic. I really like her. In Peacemaker and Suicide Squad. Um, Creature Commandos, animated type of deal, written by Gunn. It's got a bunch of characters we've seen already and some we haven't. Swamp Thing.
Oh, you can
Go ahead.
My only interest in that show is seeing how they'll translate the cartoon to live action. That's my only interest in that show, really.
Yeah, and I will say another credit to them is they're putting a very, very heavy emphasis on the animation being just as important, which I think is very cool. It's something Marvel hasn't done. It's something that Star Wars does do with obviously the Clone Wars and Rebels and that sort of thing. But having the animation be just as important, I think is really, really neat. Um, yeah, I think that's really cool. And then to have the actors, trying to have the voice actors go back and forth. I think that's really cool. And it shows that they're really, really articulate and they know their plan. They're very confident in their plan. Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. I think this is gonna be really interesting. Um, it's gonna be a really interesting juxtaposition, because you'll have Superman who's kind of living the best life, the morally good type of person, while you have Supergirl who's like kind of corrupted because she saw her people die. Superman wasn't prone to that. He didn't see that. So I want to get your thoughts on that. What do you think? What route do you think they could go with a character like Supergirl?
Well, the comics Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow was my favorite comic of last year. That comic was so good. Oh my god, no, such a fantastic run. That's who it sold out. Like out of all the comics that James could announce, Supergirl was the one that like sold out every. That comic series is like gone now. But that's going to be really cool. I kind of want it to be while the Superman film is bright and hopeful, they kind of go opposite with Supergirl, where it's kind of like darker and depressing. Because even in that comic, it's like the whole story is Supergirl trying to get revenge on somebody for the destruction of Krypton. And so while we have it's kind of like two sides of the same coin. We have Superman, bright and hopeful. Supergirl, more like dark. Not like Batman-y, but you could just tell that they're like broken and that they've seen a lot of terrible things in the comic. And I'd like said I talked about this when we were talking about Flash a couple of weeks ago. I really want them to keep Sasha Kaye for Supergirl movie. That would be really cool.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that totally. And that's just gonna be really interesting to see how the dichotomy between those two characters and that. sort of thing. Swamp Thing, uh, a horror esque type of thing. Um, Interesting. It's rumored that James Mangold, uh, the one who directed the new indie film, is going to be directing this. Very weird to have this as a film. This one kind of feels like an oddball.
I think they're not
But
doing a TV show because they already have a Swamp Thing TV show they've done. It was like it'd be too recent.
oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't know that. I was just saying though, it just feels kind of odd for a movie. Like I don't know how it's gonna like tie in. I mean, I don't know. Probably eventually with Batman, right? But like, what do you think about this? This one's weird to me.
Well, I wasn't that excited for it until I heard James Mangold was attached to. Like, say he's doing the new indie film. He did Logan. He did a film called Ford versus Ferrari. That was like an Oscar nominated film. That was a really good.
Yeah.
So I trust him as a director. I just hope they don't pull a Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness with a false horror promise. That movie, they're like, oh, this is going into a new genre for the MCU. We're going full horror with this movie, and you watch that movie. That was not a horror movie. I don't know, it had elements, but that was not a horror movie. Like freaking, what's it called? Werewolf by Night was more horror-esque than Doctor Strange, and that was like never promised to be like a horror thing. It was just like based off stuff. So I hope they go full horror with this. Like they do horror movie, not just superhero movie with horror elements.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. I think that would be really, really cool and interesting. We got Paradise Lost, which is going to be telling the story of the Amazons, uh, and it's the birthplace of Wonder Woman, obviously. It's going to be Game of Thrones esque, which just has me really excited. So I mean, this one is also high up on the. There's a lot of shows. There's a lot of shows here that, if I'm being honest, I'm more excited for than whatever Marvel's doing on the Disney Plus side of things, at least, and even some cases on the movie side, because it's just so new and fresh, and could probably maybe even compete with Marvel. What do you think about this Paradise Lost type deal? Telling kind of the origins of Wonder Woman, and her people. What do you think about this
It's
in the
my
Game of Thrones style?
my least anticipated. I think
Oh, oof.
after Creature Commandos, but like live action one, I think it's my
Okay.
anticipated. I already have a Game of Thrones show. I have House of the Dragons. I have that. I don't need another one. They're both going to be on HBO Max. Why are you competing with yourself? Like that. That's not really good brainwash. Also, too, it's not that I'm excited more or less for the action in this show because I know Zack Snyder's not gonna be a part of it. But like Zack Snyder directed the Amazons really well. Like I thought their action sequences were really good. So if they even translate like a part of that to the show, that would be exciting. But like I have my Game of Thrones S show. I don't really need to see it with the people at Themyscira. And I haven't read the comic, but I heard the comic was just too eye as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I hear Game of Thrones and I always get like really excited. So like I mean, um, yeah. So who knows? I mean, I think it's got a chance to be really good, and it's weird that they're not doing just Wonder Woman. Um, but like who knows? I'm sure James has got a plan.
I think because they're
Uh,
not sure of what they're doing with the Wonder Woman yet, whether they're keeping Gal Gadot yet.
yes, yeah. So that's where I wanted to go before we end off and stop talking. James said a lot of interesting stuff. He said The Flash is one of the greatest comic book movies ever made. He said Blue Beetle is going to be part of the DCU.
Yeah, that and Aquaman.
He, and Aquaman. So, how do you think this is going to work? Or is he lying?
I don't think he's lying per se. Um, with the Flash, I don't know if I'm going to see it yet. Still, I'm still like 50-50 if I'm going to see that movie. I'm very excited for elements like Supergirl. I rewatched Man of Steel recently. I forgot the actor's name, but the guy who plays Zod is so good. Like he makes Henry Cavill look like a bad actor in that movie. He is so good as Zod. So it's like I'm like, oh, maybe I'll come over and give this a chance. And there are Funko Pop leaks too, confirming that he's in it. That
right.
What's it called? Ben Affleck, Batman, and Michael Keaton. Wonder Woman's in the movie too. I wonder what purpose she'll serve in the movie. I think it has potential to be a good movie. The one thing that just the costumes in the movie just look okay, and just Dark Flash.
That looks goofy.
I have no interest of that as an antagonist. It's just Reverse Flash from Walmart.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, they kind of, to me, I mean, The Flash, like, it's weird because we've heard a lot of people say that it's a great comic book film, and I'm like, yeah, but it's got Ezra Miller in it. I don't know if I want to watch it. Um, but like James saying it's like you might be onto something. This might actually be a really very real thing, but also it's like they got to market. They have to make money on this film. This film budget is like upwards of $300 million. That's insane. That's insane.
For Super Bowl ad, Warner Brothers never does Super Bowl ads.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a big film. They got to make money on it, so they have to market it. They're in a, when we get to these projects finally that were all announced, it'll be different. But they're in a very weird spot. Like, you can't say the Flash doesn't matter because then the Flash doesn't make money. You kind of have to market it. You kind of have to play it up. Um, Blue Beetle can, be whatever. I'm excited for Blue Beetle personally, but
Yeah.
like, um, it's kind of tough to do, because it's not. I want James to do his own thing. I want James to, have his slate and that work. If you can work Blue Beetle in, work Blue Beetle in. That's great.
Yeah, and from what like people have been saying, and Scoobers are saying, it's like very standard. Like it's not even too like it's like all references here, references there, references everywhere. It's like very standalone, and that's where we'll probably be able to like incorporate it easily.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree with that 100%. I don't know how you're gonna do Aquaman.
Yeah, especially too since like Jason Momoa's out here like jumping around, being like, guys, I have the best news known to man on the horizon. Like, bro, are you playing Lobo? Are you gonna do Aquaman and Lobo? Or are you just doing Aquaman? Are you writing Lobo? Are you directing Lobo? Are you guest starring Lobo? Like, what are you doing?
What are you doing? It's very weird though. Again, I think I've said this a couple times. I know some people have said this. Very odd that he's more excited to play a lesser known character. I've never seen that. That just kind of odd to me. Yeah, they it's just kind of a mess. It's gonna be a mess for these next couple of years. But once we get these projects coming out, I don't know when they said that Superman film, 2025.
Yeah,
I think
20
it's
Superman, but Creature Commandos is the first technically like like new thing from the slate that it showed that's coming out first.
okay. Yeah, I believe he said Creature Commandos and Waller.
No, Waller comes out later. He just
Oh,
announced it. Waller comes out like right after Superman, but before the Authority.
okay, that makes sense then. That makes sense. Yeah, July 11th of 2025 will be the new Superman film.
Yeah, it's
Um,
getting Avengers, Kang Dynasty, Fantastic Four, Batman 2, and Superman all in 1 year is absolutely mad. And a Spider-Man film is rumored for that year too.
oh my God, this might be the best year for comic book films ever. But it probably will be.
Yeah.
Um, that's crazy. That's absolutely wild. I will ask you. How would you rate this announcement? What would you say? Do you think DC did its job? Do you think Gunn did a good job? What do you think so far?
I think it's an 8 out of 10 because, like I said, I feel like it looks like he's really caring about the comics, and all the comics he's been choosing have been very solid. One complaint is that I think he might be choosing a little bit too obscure characters for phase one. Maybe in phase two we could have done this. Like I feel like the Authority, Swamp Thing, and Creature Commandos all could have waited till phase two, especially the Authority. The only purpose I see the Authority doing is fighting Superman. Because one Authority member and being Superman, it takes like all of them to maybe do like a little bit of damage. So that's the only thing I can see is like an Authority versus Superman thing. Other than that, I see those characters playing no purpose. Creature Commandos, I also see playing no purpose in the greater scheme of things. Creature Commandos, I see too, is like kind of like side characters that like appear here and there, and maybe like in a video game or two. You're like, oh yeah, I know those guys.
Right. I think they got like Rick Flag's dad in it. It's like
Yeah,
it's like really weird. Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's very solid. I think you got 2/3 of the Trinity. You got the Lanterns, which are very underrated. I mean, well, I wouldn't even say they're underrated. They're just underutilized.
yeah.
Um,
Great to touch him ever since Green Lantern, bro.
yeah. And yeah, I think there's a good variety, and I think there's gonna be like something for everybody. And I think I'll also give credit to James. He's done a really good job of shouting out the comics that are inspiring these stories because without these comics, we don't get these stories. So I think that's something really cool. Um, that he's doing for sure.